Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the November 21st, 2023 Post Falls City Council meeting. Rhiannon is filling in for Shannon tonight. Please note that council members are all present with the exception of Mr. Walker, who's asked to be excused again tonight. I should mention there are 3 public hearings tonight, and if anybody wishes to testify, there are forms on the podium in the back. Please fill them out, turn them in to Rhiannon, and we'll call on you at the appropriate time. I do have a couple of announcements. City Hall and city business offices will be closed Thursday, November 23rd and Friday, November 24th in observance of Thanksgiving Day. Winterfest is Friday, December 1st from 4 to 8 p.m. here at City Hall. The plaza will be bustling with fun holiday activities for kids of all ages, including a special visit from Santa. Visit the city's website for more details. And then I want to take a moment to congratulate Len Crosby for being awarded the 2023 Spirit of Freedom Idaho Veterans Service Award. The award was created in 2002 by Senator Mike Crapo to recognize Idaho veterans and volunteers for their outstanding service to our country and its veterans. Len is a member of the Military Order of the Purple Heart, the Military Officers Association of America, Idaho Veterans Assistance League, American Legion Honor Guard, Kootenai County Veterans Commission, the American Legion Post 154, and Disabled American Veterans. Thank you, Len, for your continued service to our country and for all you do for the veterans in Post Falls and all of Idaho. And Len has been very active in the Veterans Home here in Post Falls and has been involved to take steps to increase the residency at the new Veterans Home. And again, he's I've said it before, but he's a bird dog when he gets something on when he gets on something like this. He wants to see it done right, and we're all the better because of it. So congratulations to Len, and thank him for all his service. Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight?
We have none tonight, sir.
Are there any declarations of conflict? Seeing none, would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the November 7th, 2023 City Council meeting. Item B is payables October 31st through November 13th, 2023. And item C is September 2023 cash and investments. Item D is Bobcat Toolcat replacement. Item E is audit engagement letter. Item F is street division request to surplus vehicles. Item G is fleet division request to surplus vehicles. Item H is Retail Village 1, 2, and 3 construction improvement agreements updated. Item I is Street Division request to surplus equipment, and we have requested we're going to consolidate those so they come on one line item in the future. Item J is Prairie Trail Improvement Agreement with the Jacqueline Land Company. Item K is Street Division request to surplus equipment and vehicles. Item L is purchase of a compact wheel loader for the Parks Division. And item M is commercial tracks at Prairie Crossing subdivision plat application.
Any questions on the consent calendar?
I'd move for approval of the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Thorson.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is public hearings, and as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we do have 3. The first public hearing is on the DeAtley Annexation, and with that, I'll open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Thorson, and council members. Ethan Porter, one of the planners here with the city, to present the DeAtley Annexation, which is case file ANNX 23-1. It's getting hung up on the connection, it looks like. So, the owner of this is Matt DeAtley with Yukon Corporation. The applicant is Devin Meacham. And basically their request tonight is, as you know, for annexations, there's 2. There's a annexing their request, which they're asking for 5 acres of county land to come into the city of Post Falls. And then you have the zoning with that, which on the October 10th Planning and Zoning hearing, they recommended the approval for the requested zoning of community commercial services. So that would be your two actions tonight, as to whether you want to annex it in, and then do you approve or deny the zoning that they're proposing. Looking at the subject site, you can see here it's at the northeast corner of Celtice Way and Pleasant View Road, hatched there in red on the map. And so looking a little more at the site, currently it's vacant, undeveloped right now, and so there are no physical or natural features that have been brought up other than it being over the Ratcherum Prairie aquifer. So nothing through this process has kind of been notified or brought to our attention as far as any issues or anything on site that would hinder development or annexation. Also, the water and wastewater provider would be the city of Post Falls for this area. Kind of looking at that surrounding zoning and land uses for this area at that intersection. To the east, or excuse me, to the north, you have the railroad right-of-way, and then further past that, you have industrial land that's currently vacant, not developed, part of the Pleasant View North annexation there. And then to the east, you have Boulder Court subdivision, which is a commercial subdivision for commercial lots. So the request tonight for this piece of property being commercial would be compatible with that to the east, with the other commercial subdivision there along Boulder Court. To the south, you have Celtice Way, and then just on the other side of the road, you have commercial zoning. Currently, there's a business there. It's the old Army surplus store, and then there's another business in there currently. So there's a commercial activity going on there, which would also be compatible with their request of community commercial services. To the west, across Pleasant View Road, you do have a vacant commercial site there as well, roughly just under 5 acres also. And it's currently undeveloped, vacant as well. But then further to the west of that, that triangle gray piece, which the gray is industrial zoning, you have Far West Steel, which is being developed now. So if you go out there, you'd be able to see a large building, Far West Steel, being developed currently. Looking at the review criteria for annexation, we look at basically the future land use map in the focus area being consistent with the comprehensive plan. With that, the future land use designation of this site would be commercial. As you can see there on red on the map, all that red is commercial. Pink is business commercial, and then the gray is the industrial, business industrial. And so the category for commercial for that land use designation basically allows for wide variety of general service, retail, professional office, and mixed commercial and multifamily uses that serve the local and regional residents as the traveling public. So that kind of looks at the future land use designation of the site, which does align with what they're proposing. Looking at the focus area, it falls within the West Prairie focus area. You can see just kind of in the center on the south side there where the project location is. Within the description in the comprehensive plan, there's 2 highlights that come out that would support this proposal: seeking opportunities to develop off-corridor commercial, which is pretty much what they're asking and proposing, as well as the other prairie areas may warrant commercial use considerations if adjacent to the arterial collector streets where traffic volume exceeds 4,000 vehicles per day. So you can kind of see the traffic count and some of the staff comments for that within the staff report. So that does line with kind of their proposal they're requesting. And I'll go more into those arterials and the roadways in the upcoming slides. But looking at review criteria 2, we look at the goals and policies being consistent with the comprehensive plan through this consideration. So we have goals 1, 5, and 7 that you can see there that talk about the resilient economy, fiscal health of the city, basically keeping it vital and attractive in Post Falls, as well as establishing the types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls supporting community needs and the long-term sustainability. So with that, you can kind of see in the staff report how that goes into a little more detail there, but it will be covered in the upcoming slides also. And then looking at goals 12 and 14, maintaining the city's, again, long-term fiscal health, and then involving the community in the decision-making for local government, planning and decision-making, which is why we're here tonight. So we look at the policies then after the goals. And so policy 1, supporting the land use patterns that maintain or enhance community level services, and again, the long-term fiscal health of the community, enhance resident quality of life, and then compatible, well-designed development, and then implementing the goals and policies which are stated here in this presentation and in the staff report. Policy 2 looks at when you're looking at zoning designation, consider these factors there, bulleted out. Future land use mapping we kind of already touched on. The compatibility with surrounding land uses was already discussed as well. We'll look at the infrastructure and service plans in the upcoming slides, as well as the traffic patterns, and go into a little more detail with those. But again, goals and policies, as mentioned, this is laid out in the staff report, kind of discussed here in this presentation also. Policies 5, 8, and 9 you can see there. We look at the direct location of commercial shopping centers areas near the arterial intersections and high trafficked areas, which would be along Pleasant View Road and Southeast Way. Since it's commercial, there's an opportunity for a shopping area or center to be developed there, so that would be maybe in support of that. We look at encouraging compatible infill development, which, as you saw, this was surrounded by incorporated city Post Falls lands, so this would be a county island, and it would be an infill development when it gets developed. Policy 9 looks at the annexation of county islands. As I just mentioned, that would be supportive of that, since this is an outlier and just kind of a single county pocket. And then going into the infrastructure and service plans, the city's water and water reclamation systems have the capacity to provide service, and the city is willing to serve the property at the requested zoning request. So there's a little bit further detail in the staff report, but ultimately the city would be willing to serve and does have the capacity. Looking at the traffic and future patterns for that, again, it's adjacent to Celtice and Pleasant View Road, which Celtice you can see there and labeled or outlined in the staff report. It's a principal arterial roadway, and then the Pleasant View Road is a minor arterial. So both would be supportive of kind of those uses for commercial along that intersection along this property. So there is a point there, access to the site per the KMPO. It's basically identified as a critical arterial corridor, and so the site will be limited for access on that location along the Pleasant View Road. So policies 24 and 26 look at the transportation corridors, as just talked about, making sure they're adequate rights-of-way, future corridor, including utility facilities. So with the dedication of that right-of-way, that will be kind of cleaned up there and included. And then we maintain and improve continuity of sidewalks, trails, and bicycle paths in Post Falls. Through development, frontage improvements will have to be done, so that does include pedestrian network and connectivity along the extents of this property. So that would be connected. Policy 33 and 45, we look at the annexation, helping the transportation plan, enabling completion and preserving continuity of circulatory patterns for roads and pedestrian ways, which I just kind of mentioned. That frontage improvements will help connect that, especially to the east. Since the east is already developed, it'll tie it into that corner and help. Policy 45 looks at the annexation decisions, guided by and considering those bullet points there. And so you can kind of see those laid out a little bit more within the staff report, but a lot of that deals with things that I've already discussed, providing those necessary rights-of-way and easements, and looking at the studies and environmental public service factors, things like that. Which leads us on to the last review criteria, which is 3. Does the proposed zoning district create this word always gets me, but a demonstrable adverse impact upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services within the city? Thanks. So with that, obviously these hearings, we send out agency notice. We say, hey, is there any issues that you guys foresee with this? Here's the agencies that were notified. Once they have time to review and kind of respond, we get a response back from them. And so we had 3 of them, which is the DEQ. They provided no comment. Post Falls Highway District provided no comment. And then Panhandle Health responded with no comments either. So there was nothing pretty much brought up from the other agencies that we notified to create an adverse impact. So that being said, I will stand for Any questions you have for staff at this point regarding this?
Any questions at this point?
Go for it.
So the limitation on ingress and egress on Pleasant View, is that gonna be basically one driveway for that 5-acre plot, or do we know that much?
I'll let Rob discuss that a little bit more.
Robert was everything.
Councilman Malloy, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. In the plans we have been looking at with the developer, there's the anticipation of 2 access points onto Pleasant View Road. The southernmost one is going to be restricted to right in, right out, and then the northern one would be a full access movement at this time.
Another question, in terms of, because I know we've got the whole urban renewal district running up Pleasant View and the eventual school site all the way at the top of that. Is there already utilities, sewer, water, et cetera, running up Pleasant View at that point, or will this help start getting that worked up north?
It will need to be extended to the north from Celtice Way. We've got plans that have been developed to a certain extent, but not to the point where they have been approved to start getting some of those utilities. Plus, in the packet, there was some of the discussion on the preliminary engineering plans have been put together from a concept as to what size those utilities need to be to go up that corridor and how to phase them in with the urban renewal district so that they can get put in the most cost-effective manner.
So I'm trying to find a way to, does adding this at this time help that effort or hinder it? Because I'd hate to have somebody do a bunch of development, then you just gotta tear it all up again and put the utilities in.
The stuff that they would be putting in would not be a significant hindrance to what needs to be done with the urban renewal district. We do know that there are one initial force main that's going to need to go into the easement area, which is on their property, but the sidewalk that's going to go in place, the curb's already there, so it's not, the work's going to have to impact the road one way or the other.
So it's not gonna add a bunch of stuff that we gotta tear up and
No.
replace? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Nope. Thanks, Rob. Does the applicant wish to speak? When you get here, name for the record, please. We've got a timer on the table up front for you.
My name is Devin Meacham with Black Commercial Inc. in Spokane, and I won't take 15 minutes, I promise. Nothing further to add. The staff in the city has been very helpful in this whole process, and so my hat's off to Ethan, and it's been very helpful. So any questions you have for me, I'd be happy to. I represent the seller, so any questions you have for me, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? See none?
All right.
Thank you. Anyone wishing to testify?
No.
You're not going to rebut. Let me rephrase that. Do you wish to rebut? You can't because nothing was said. So with that, I will close the public hearing. Council's up for your deliberation. Now we're going to take this in 2 steps. So the first step will be whether or not council wants to entertain the annexation. And if that is determined to be a yes, then we will go through the criteria on the zoning. Is that correct?
Yep. Tonight's our first night under our new review criteria that was adopted a few months ago. So we finally had some applications working through that process this last year. So
So the question is, council, do you wish to consider this annexation?
yep.
I do.
Yes.
So
Okay.
is it in the best interest is the annexation of the property in the best interest of the city?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else to add there?
I don't think so.
Great, great
We'll
infill project.
Move on to the first review criteria. So the first review criteria is the proposed zoning district consistent with the future land use map and focus area contained in the currently adopted Post Falls Comprehensive Plan? So basically, what designation does the future land use map give the subject property, and what does the focus area support?
Showed it as commercial.
Who'd like to lead on this one?
Well, that area has long been determined to be where the focus for commercial and industrial is. So this is a natural continuation of that, and that's part of the focus area for certain is to continue the commercial industrial aspects, particularly along the higher traffic corridors, which includes Celtice and Pleasant View. It also fits nicely with the urban renewal area that's been set up there, with a development that's proposed to happen to the north and the west. of that spot, so it's just a really natural flow, kind of right down the line for all the hopes of the comprehensive plan.
Anything else to add?
Hit it on there.
So the second review criteria is the proposed zoning district consistent with the goals and policies contained in the currently adopted comprehensive plan relevant to the area under consideration?
Yes.
Yes.
Again, I would say yes. The important factors there, I think, are as that area is starting to develop rather rapidly, pedestrian facilities are going to be pretty key to make sure that stays safe, especially again as we move north, culminating in a school to the north. Providing commercial and employment opportunities again is a big aspect of that particular focus area.
Okay.
Right, and finally, the third review criteria really speaks to other public agencies. Does the proposed zoning district create a demonstrable adverse impact upon delivery of services by any political subdivision providing services within the city?
Not that anyone communicated.
Yeah, I'd say none.
And even that weren't communicated, it's not adding population, so it's not going to put any strain on school districts, for example. It's a fairly small plot for commercial, which doesn't propose any special fire hazards that I'm aware of. And I think it helps the infrastructure of the area.
Improves connectivity and safety for public services.
Thank you.
So at this point, we've gone through. We've decided that you do want to consider the annexation. You've addressed all the criteria for the zoning. As we move forward, you need two separate motions.
I think we can combine them into one motion. I think that's what we've been doing to consider the annexation and the initial zoning.
Okay.
I would move to approve the DeAtley annexation file number ANNX-23-1 and that it be assigned the CCS zoning designation.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Ethan. Next public hearing is the Bogie annexation. With that, I'll open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Thorson, and members of City Council. John Manley, Planning Manager, introducing the Bogie annexation, file number ANNX 23-2. The owner is Northern Lights LLC. The applicant is Jude Dittman of Lake City Engineering. So what they're requesting is review and approval of the proposed annexation for the requested single-family R1 zoning district. The Planning and Zoning Commission forwarded a recommendation of that single-family R1 at their September 12th public hearing. Location is, as you see here, on the north side of Bogie Drive between Greens Ferry and Cecil Road. Currently, it's a large lot, single-family residence at this location over the Rathdrum Prairie Aquifer. Water provider would be the Ross Point Water District, with the City of Post Falls providing wastewater services. Looking at the surrounding zoning and land uses of this, you see in yellow here, that's predominantly the single-family zoning. But to the north, we have Corbin Meadows. It's an R1 subdivision. If you've driven out there, you can see some homes currently being built out there. It's a fairly recent annexation that's being developed. To the west, to east, we got some Kootenai County, a couple Kootenai County properties there that are single family. To the south, we got Millsap annexation, a recently approved annexation that will be more likely going along at a similar time as this proposal. And then to the west is the Boyd's subdivision, which is R1. So that kind of sets the framework of the area around it, and then we go into the review criteria for the zoning that established the recommendation by the Planning and Zoning Commission. First one was, is the proposed zoning district consistent with the future land use map and the focus area contained in the currently adopted Post Falls comprehensive plan? You see that light yellow area, that's that low density residential, and it anticipates uses up to 8 dwelling units per acre that are residential in nature. Looking at the focus area, in conjunction with this, this is an area that is anticipated to have as much as 30,000 residents at some time in the future by 2040. There is no specific, when you look at tenants that are itemized in this for this particular request, but it is, we go looking at the goals and policies also with a request like this. Which that then leads us to review criteria 2. Is the proposed zoning district consistent with the goals and policies found in the currently adopted comprehensive plan? So here's 3 goals here. Keep Post Falls neighborhood safe, vital, and attractive. Maintain and improve Post Falls transportation network on pace with concert with the needs and plan objectives. One way that can occur, and I'll go back here, is as you see these areas that have been annexed in, we get an improved connectivity with the right-of-way dedication and road improvements. And you can see incrementally where the multi-use trails are being created on both sides, which is improving the neighborhood's connectivity going east-west along Bogie, with the school being to the west. Plan for and establish the types of quantities of land uses in Post Falls supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. One way to do this is with land uses. You see in this area on that image a lot of residential zoning. We have a commercial corridor to the east of Highway 41. All of these rooftops will support the commercial services that are just to the east, and kind of sort of a synergy between them. Goal 8, protect and maintain Post Falls natural resources, including clean air, soils, river, and aquifer, minimizing light, noise, and pollution citywide. Goal 12, maintain the city's Post Falls long-term fiscal health. A lot of that is done through diversified product in all zoning sectors, be it industrial, commercial, and residential. So this does provide that residential single-family niche that Post Falls needs. Going into the policies, it helps support the goals that are established in that comprehensive plan. Support land use patterns that maintain and enhance community level service. Foster long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance residential quality of life, promote compatibility with well-designed development, and implement goals and policies in the comprehensive plan. Policy 2, look at the future land use mapping, which I've gone into a little bit already. Talked about the compatibility of land uses surrounding it, which they're all single-family R1 zone product being developed that are within the city of Post Falls. Infrastructure and service plans and existing and future traffic patterns, they'll be on the next slides, all of which is to meet the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. So looking at the infrastructure and service plan elements, City of Post Falls, they will provide the sanitary sewer services for this, and they're willing to serve the site. And as stated in the intro, Rossmore Water District will provide water. Looking at existing and future traffic patterns, you can see here that they're adjacent to Bogie Drive as a minor collector, and they're near roads connecting Greens Ferry, a minor arterial, and Cecil Road, a major collector. I've already kind of touched on the right-of-way dedication and the connectivity with the roads and the right-of-way with the project. Policy 8, encourage compatible infill development and redevelopment of vacant and underutilized properties. And it goes along with Policy 9, encourage annexation of county islands within the city. They're both applicable on this, as stated, near other single-family R1 properties. Policy 15 deals with creating available housing for future housing needs. Policy 24 looks at protecting the transportation corridors from encroachment and preserve adequate right-of-way for future corridors. This is the element of which annexations do allow for. When you annex, you do get that right-of-way, and you provide the opportunity to create those corridors meeting the urban needs of a community. And that just goes right into Policy 27, improve street connectivity in all areas of Post Falls, including walkability, public health, safety, and transportation efficiency. The next ones deal with annexations more specifically. Annexation should help implement the Post Falls transportation plans, enabling completion and preserving continuity and circulatory patterns for roads and pedestrians. And policy 45, guide annexation decisions by considering the following. A lot of that I've already touched on. And we do route this to other departments for looking at the consistency with any sort of water, sewer, transportation, parks needs. And we receive comments for school and emergency services potential concerns with their master plans. Third criteria deals with the zoning district as to create a demonstrable adverse impact upon the delivery of services. Here's the agencies that were notified of the agency comments. See, the police department was neutral. Yellowstone Pipeline, they had no comment. Highway district was in favor, highlighting that it was consistent with the comprehensive plan. Bonneville Power had no impact. Panhandle Health District, more or less, had no comment. School district remained neutral. Kootenai County Fire, they would reserve their comment for the time of development, and DEQ had stated that there's no environmental impact for them. So there's the three criteria and that third one. We just kind of went over highlighting the agencies that were commented. Any questions for me right now on this proposal?
Questions for John? See none? Thank you. Applicant wish to speak. Is that yours there?
There you go.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Thorson, Councilors. Drew Dittman with Lake City Engineering, 126 East Poplar Avenue in the city of Coeur d'Alene, for the record. Here tonight representing Northern Lights Development with their annexation request for about 5 acres, R1 zoning. As John had kind of shown you this similar map earlier, it is a county infill island. This is the same developer that is currently developing the property to the west, the Boyd's Landing subdivision. So this would be a continuation of that project and kind of filling in that little pocket of county property there. These are the 3 zoning criteria you guys are probably going to be tired of by the end of the night with 3 annexations on the agenda, but this is the criteria that you've got to judge these annexations by. John went through these, so I don't think I need to go through them any further. Obviously, this is I'm going to go for a little bit of an assumptive close. This is an infill piece. It fits with entirely R1 zoning surrounding it. It's single family. It's a continuation of an existing project. We feel it's a good fit for the city, so I'll answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Dittman? See none?
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to testify?
Yes.
Thank you. Wishing to testify in opposition, Samantha Stigleader.
Mayor, Council, Samantha Stigleader, Post Falls, Idaho. I'd like to speak to the question of annexation and not so much to the zoning aspect of it. And I'm in opposition to that. I think that you have more leeway there. At this time, on the city's website, it says that there's at least 15 already approved subdivisions that haven't even been plotted. So you don't think that this is really necessary at this time. And then during Mr. Manley's report, it was pointed out that there's a number of undeveloped plots already around this one. So it just seems perhaps unnecessary at this time that we annex more in when we haven't really finished developing what we have already annexed in. And then just one other point, I think that the developer pointed out that that the other properties were requested and annexed in, and then now we're coming back and as a reason to annex it in is that they're already building the other one. So I guess maybe I'm struggling to explain my logic here quickly, but first you ask for 5 and it's just for 5, and then you come back a little bit later and ask for 5 more, and part of the reason that would be a proponent of the second 5 is that you already asked for the first 5, so really you're kind of just asking for 10 but in like a 2-step. So anyway, that's all that I want to say about it. Thanks.
Thank you. Applicant wish to rebut?
Mayor Jacobson, again, Drew Dittman for the record. Again, we feel it's a good fit. It completely meshes with the surrounding subdivisions that are there. The developer that's developing the Boyd's Landing property to the west didn't own this property at the time. It came for sale after they started that. That's why it's a two-piece annexation, if you will. Typically, we see that happen a lot as these things develop out. So again, we think it's a good fit. There's obviously a demand for more housing in this area and in this city. So we think it's a good project.
Thank you. That'll close public hearing. So again, first question is, council, what's your thought on the annexation of this property? And if you want to read it to be official, we'll let you do it.
Is the annexation of the property in the best interest of the city?
I
Me,
believe
yes.
so.
I believe it is.
Yes. Kenny?
Dive into the review criteria.
One moment. Kenny, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, the only thing I'm looking at that I'm seeing is Bogie Drive going through. It looks like it's pretty narrow there. And so, am I correct in assuming that that would kind of add to almost completing that through, providing more access?
It just adds to the current portion that's not developed, but it will leave to the east. There's 2 north-south 5-acre chunks that will have a county road section until such time that those are improved.
What is the access through there like right now?
The access is 2-way traffic, and then you have a gravel neck-down section that's on gravel. We're on the unimproved portions.
Oh, I think it does make sense.
Mr. Harrington, you had 5 people that.
Yeah, I was just, with the questions outside of the discussion, we should probably reopen the record for the new information to come in, and then we can close the record for the discussion portion of it, because we're.
So I need to reopen the public hearing to address the road question?
Reopen the public hearing and then have John repeat basically what he was saying to
Reopen the
get that
public
in.
hearing. Mr. Manley?
Yes, so with the question regarding what's currently out there in front of this proposal, the areas that are in the county have a county road section, which is a gravel road section more or less. And then those areas developing have been developed with impervious surface, with city standard roadways. And so the proposed location, Bogie, and the area south upon development, Millsap, they would get that, leaving 2 opposing 5-acre tracts with a reduced area, same as today, with the current 2-way traffic going on a gravel road.
Okay. Since we reopened the public hearing, does the applicant wish to rebut the new information that came forward? I do not. Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Any other public comment?
Yep.
Nope. Seeing none. Once again, I'll close the public hearing. Thank you.
Thanks. So we were on the first review criteria, and is the proposed zoning district consistent with the future land use map and focus area contained in the currently adopted Post Falls comprehensive plan?
Yes. I was waiting for the look.
Yes, why?
No, one of the things I think that makes this a perfect annexation is, we've talked about county pockets before, but adding the connectivity of safety, the future need of housing, especially R1, I think is desirable. In this area, it's consistent with the surrounding areas, so annexation of this property makes sense to me.
Anybody else? Okay.
Is the proposed zoning district consistent with the goals and policies contained in the currently adopted Post Falls comprehensive plan?
Yes. I think the biggest value of this one is going to be the vehicular and pedestrian connectivity improvements. We've got Bogie Drive that's going to receive full improvements over that section width-wise where this is located. Of course, there'll still be that one north-south section that still isn't included in that, but I think that's probably going to come pretty quick. Also, you don't have your map back up. It's not on my map, but there's another street coming off of Callery Street that just kind of dead ends. I'm assuming that eventually will go through and service all of these residents to give an alternate to using Bogie Drive, so this will help improve that connectivity. So to me, that's the biggest benefit of this. It doesn't, everything around there is R1. It doesn't bother anybody, and it's going to improve the connectivity for everybody.
We'll go back to what Mr. Ziegler said. It's the infill of the county pocket, which I think is important because we've got county pockets throughout the city that make it a little bit difficult as far as enforcement, law enforcement, et cetera. And the fact that that was policy 8 and policy 9 is it is compatible with the neighboring development. So I would agree, although I don't get to vote on this one, I would agree that it's a perfect fit for annexation and a R1 zoning.
And finally, does the proposed zoning district create a demonstrable adverse impact upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing services within the city?
No comments.
None that were noted.
Got what you need?
Okay, got what I need.
Entertain a motion?
If I get out of here, I'll give you one.
There you go.
I would move to approve the Bogie annexation file number ANNX-23-2, and that it be assigned the R1 zoning designation.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. The third public hearing tonight is Copper Basin Prairie annexation. That'll open that public hearing.
So yes, Copper Basin Prairie annexation, case file ANX 23-3. The owner of this is Copper Basin Construction, Inc., with Drew Dittman of Lake City Engineering representing this one as well. This request is for a review and approval from the applicant to annex approximately 20 acres into the city of Post Falls with a mix of high-density R3 zoning and CCS zoning. On October 10th of this year, the Planning and Zoning Commission met and they forwarded a recommendation of the requested high-density multifamily R3 of about 14 acres and about 6 acres of the community commercial services. Here you see the general makeup of what that would look like on this site. We'll have other slides to be bringing a little more context coming up, but here's where you see it's on the north side of Prairie between Cecil Road and Greens Ferry. These areas have been annexed in to the west and east, and it is kind of an infill area. So here's a little more context here. It's about 1/3 of a mile east of the intersection of Greens Ferry Road and Prairie, 2/3 from Highway 41. I took the opportunity on this particular slide in blue. That is upon development of this area, that's would be the multi-use trail linkages. Prairie Avenue is designated to have a multi-use trail on both the north and south side of that. Everything has been annexed on the south side of Prairie to connect Greens Ferry to Highway 41. This brings in a chunk of this to bring that opportunity. The only remaining piece will be the nursery on the northwest corner, highlighted in yellow, of pieces yet to attain to get that pedestrian connectivity and full road width between Greens Ferry and Highway 41. Current land use on this is vacant, undeveloped. It's over the Rathrum Prairie Aquifer. Ross Point Water District would be the water service provider, with the city of Post Falls providing wastewater. Looking at the surrounding land uses of this proposed area, there you see the area there in gray. To the east in the red hatched area, that is a technology mix zone property. To be straight on that particular area, that was brought in through a Beyond Green annexation, had a tech park mixed on it, of which that has been sold to a new developer, but they are bound by the entitlements of the annexation agreement that direct the types of uses, where they're gonna go. I allude in the staff report that west of Cecil Road, they are planning a predominantly multifamily on that west side of that. That would be adjacent to the proposed R3 area that was denoted earlier. With, they do intend to have more commercial running along Prairie Avenue, of which speculatively is why the applicant wanted to be consistent with what's adjacent to the west and east of them. And if this input signal comes back.
Broke it.
I'll question while we're waiting for that.
Yeah.
Is this plot the same owner or developer as the surrounding property in the tech zone?
From my understanding, and the applicant, when he gets up here, can clarify, but I do understand that to the north and northeast of that, those parcels, Copper Basin, I believe, own as well, and they'll be worked on in conjunction with this site as a master planned area. I believe that was cited in the P&Z meeting.
It was, but but directly to the east is not, correct?
I don't believe they own the tech park, correct?
No, they don't have. East of Cecil Road, it's a different developer, east of Cecil Road. So Cecil Road will run, when we get the map back up, I'll highlight that.
I guess I'm not even so much concerned about east of Cecil Road. I'm concerned with the parcel between Cecil Road and this parcel.
Right. So there is a line of changed ownership. It's difficult for me to communicate that with.
Yeah, we can wait for that. I just figured.
Yeah.
I was trying to kill time too.
At least I know the question ahead of time when it.
Stephanie's coming in.
I think you can kind of see.
What's
in the
that?
Shaded, the different shades here.
Okay. Well,
Do you want to take this?
Yeah, you can see the different shades. I think it's Cecil.
Mayor, do you want to take a 5-minute recess? Or?
Might as well.
I'm going to take a 5-minute recess here, so we will adjourn for 5 minutes and let the technology gurus do their thing.
Go,
Be back in 5 minutes. The meeting back to order.
Mayor and council.
And thank you to the technology people for helping John out. John, don't mess it up again.
That was close. All right, so the question was a little bit about ownership, common ownership. So if you can, there's a line about right there in that tech mixed area, Cecil Road running north-south eventually. Everything north of about this line is Copper Basin. South on that parcel is Mr. Douglas, who owns the remaining balance of the tech mixed area as well.
And to the west is different ownership yet, right?
Yeah, to the west in the, tonight, what's being requested of that would be Copper Basin, and to the west here is, was the Joseph Family Trust annexation that came in. Their intent is where you see the red to put in a storage unit facility or other CCS type properties. And then there is a restriction. I don't believe they can do multifamily at that particular location. And then where you see in the red and yellow hatched area, the intent is to put in mixed commercial, industrial type uses that front Prairie Avenue with portions fronting Greens Ferry. I do believe the applicant is in communication with all parties for connectivity. Does that answer?
Answers it, thank you.
Yep. Good questions, since we are looking at compatibility with surrounding zoning and land uses right now. Here is to the west, where I just talked about the, currently you can see here on the left side, 5-acre tracts and 10-acre tracts with single-family homes. There's that annexation of Joseph Family Trust that brought forward the development agreement controlling that area. To the south, you see the development there in the picture on the bottom left right area and bottom right corner. In green, I have this little cloud. Lynn Street runs north-south. That'll come up in a slide later on about this area, which is going to be a connecting point for into this proposed annexation area sometime. But you can see the commercial industrial rec building along the south side of this proposed annexation area. So now going into the zone change criteria that Planning and Zoning reviewed and forwarded their recommendation. They looked at the zoning district being consistent with the future land use map and the focus areas. This one here, you see the blue, that's transitional. The intent to transitional of our comp plan more or less just punch you to a focus area. It was an unknown time when we might see annexations in that in the foreseeable future. So you look to the focus area. Once again, highlighting that this is an area that was intended or planned for or looked at would more than likely see requests for rooftops to support the 41 corridor. You see here the first one highlighted, focus provisions for multifamily, commercial, and tech uses near higher classified roadways, which Prairie Avenue would be one of those. Development should provide pedestrian connectivity to all multi-use paths and trails, including prairie trails. I mentioned on an earlier slide in that blue, the multi-use trail that would run along ultimately Prairie Avenue. Along with that, staff will be looking and working with the developments to connect these areas to the Prairie Trail, which is running along that location there through the 41 North planning area. It's also the bottom one highlighted, focus provisions for commercial uses along arterial collectors streets where traffic volumes exceed 4,000, which the proposed CCS area would be along that denotation. So here's the goals here. They kind of put them on one slide here. Grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing community prosperity and fiscal health. I think in the staff report there might have been comments on this area here. I'll go to back. Ultimately, this area could evolve with interconnected roadways, trail systems, people living near places of employment, places for shopping and commerce bound between 41 Prairie and Greens Ferry, of which could meet that goal. Maintain and improve pedestrian transportation network on pace in concert with the need and plan objectives. I've kind of gone over this evening about right-of-way acquisitions with annexations. It helps with attaining that and getting the trail connections. Plan for and establish types of quantity of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and long-term sustainability. Like the previous one, single-family sector provides a niche in Post Falls. Multifamily does as well. Neither one of those sectors are seeing a significant increase in vacancy rate, of which alludes to the fact that the rate we're building them, the demand is there. We're not overbuilding, of which you would get increased vacancy rates. It's a correlative effect. If you build too much, you get increased vacancy if the demand's not there. Goal 12, maintain the city's long-term fiscal health. Looking at the policies, support land use patterns that maintain and enhance community level service, fosters the long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain enhanced residential quality of life, promote compatible well-designed development, implement goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. I kind of already touched on a little bit enhanced residential quality of life. It seems a growing trend. People do and are attracted to live, work, walkable areas. Promote compatible, well-designed development. We have design standards in our code for both multifamily and commercial. We used to not, but in the last 3 years, to assist ensuring that there's a good product with open space, amenities, and connectivity, we've designed and created design standards for both of those. Policy 2, apply and revise zoning designations with careful considerations of the following factors. I believe I've gone over the first two. We'll go into the infrastructure and service plans and future traffic patterns next, all of which is intended to meet the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. So the infrastructure and service plans, the City of Post Falls, they're going to provide the sanitary sewer services for this area. You can see here, this is where I mentioned Lynn Street. Here, that the sanitary sewer for the site is located southerly property line at that extension of Lynn Street, where that bubble was at in that map earlier. And then the water would be provided by the Ross Point Water District. Looking at traffic patterns, you can see here the comment about the right-of-way being acquired with this proposal. Site access will be restricted to Lynn Street, which will be configured as a 3/4 restriction, no left turns from the site onto Prairie Avenue. So the engineering department looked at this proposal, looked at the proposed uses and how it could safely maneuver and meander through a road classification such as Prairie Avenue, as commented accordingly in the staff report. Policy 8, encourage compatible infill development and redevelopment in vacant and underutilized properties in city limits. Encourage annexation county islands within the city with priority given to, of which it is surrounded by incorporated areas. Policy 24 and 26 both deal with transportation and continuity. You see that another comment about the right-of-way and creating the ability to connect your sidewalks, trails, and bicycle paths. Annexation policies, policy 33 and 45, you can see annexation should help implement Post Falls transportation plans, enable completion and preserving continuity of circulatory patterns for roads and pedestrian ways. Policy 45 kind of has that list of 5 items there to help guide annexation decisions, considering those items there that you see listed. Once again, they were routed to other entities, of which our own internal departments have commented about water, sewer, and transportation elements. We routed about parks, and we didn't hear anything from schools or emergency services that were concerned. Promote the planting and protection of trees citywide. I don't know, like Montrose is a pretty good example that I refer to. Like at one time Montrose didn't have very many trees on it, but you look at it now and the trees are pretty mature. So you do get some additional trees with development through time. And even some of the multifamily sites you see around there in their open spaces, you get more trees than what are currently there. The policy 72 more or less deals with protecting the Prairie aquifer. Looking at review criteria 3, does the proposed zoning district create a demonstrable adverse impact on delivery of services by any political subdivision? Here's the agencies that were notified. Of those that commented, the school district was neutral. As usual, the fire department want to hold their comments at the time of development. You can see a comment there by the health district. Their comment about commercial industrial facility needs to submit application with the PhD for chemical storage and handling. That's done concurrently with processes that are already in place, and they coordinate that with the engineering division. The highway district, they're in favor of this proposal. DEQ, they said that there is no environmental impact. So there's that criteria there. Nothing was received to counter that criteria. Any questions for me on this project at this time?
Go ahead, Joe.
So Lynn Street, I think you called it, with the 3/4 access onto Prairie, does that exist yet?
You know, I actually have not driven by that. I may need Rob to actually come up and comment on that.
This. Rob will
It does on the south side.
Councilor Malloy, Robert Paul's Assistant City Engineer. Can you repeat the question exactly on Lynn Street?
So the comment in the staff presentation was that access to this parcel, this development, would be via Lynn Street with a 3/4 right in, right out, left in. I see Lynn Street on this map exists south of Prairie, but obviously does not exist north of Prairie, correct?
That is correct. And for clarification on that, eventually it will become 3/4 turn movement at that location. With initial development, the road volumes out there and the road configuration where there's a two-way center turn lane can handle full movements. But at such time that the internal road system is set up and other roads allow for access from this site either to Cecil Road or to Greens Ferry Road, that would allow for the city to proceed forward with putting in the 3/4 turn restriction.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Rob. Any comments or questions of John?
I have a quick question. You mentioned on the west, I believe it was, the Joseph Annexation, or the Joseph Family Trust, that there was a restriction on R3 with that one. Could you elaborate on what that was?
Yeah, so when this annexation came forward, their desire was for storage units, but the annexation agreement on that, I believe.
I can answer that if you want.
Yes, please.
So at the time we were considering that, there was concern that a CCS can end up with multifamily, 3-story apartments with a special use permit. And at that time, or even right now, the only access to that development would be either from Greens Ferry or Prairie, and we didn't want a whole bunch of apartments dumping out directly onto either Greens Ferry or Prairie. So put it in the development agreement when we had that annexation, there would be no multifamily on that plot. So that's how that ended up there.
They agreed to that.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
Yep.
How about other comments or questions? Thanks, John.
All right.
Applicant wish to testify.
I'll let you see it.
Maybe. There we go. Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Thorson, Councilors. Drew Dittman again, Lake City Engineering, 126 East Poplar Avenue in the city of Coeur d'Alene. For the record, representing Copper Basin Construction tonight, again, in an annexation request. 20 acres on Prairie Avenue. It is, for all practical purposes, an infill county island piece. This was brought to you guys probably 3 years ago with the same developer with a request for annexation. It was prior to Highway 41 being completed, prior to some of the other surrounding annexations being done. It was denied at that time. Obviously, 3 years later, Highway 41's done. You've got some annexations around it. You've got property to the south that's been developed out, some commercial activity there. So we felt it was the appropriate time to bring this project back in front of you guys. Here's the zoning map. So we're requesting commercial along Prairie Avenue and R3 zoning north of that. To answer Councilor Malloy's question, you can see the area to the north that's highlighted in green. That's the property that Copper Basin owns. The same developer owns that property to the north. John tried to point that out, but I had already highlighted it in green on my map for you. So again, we've been talking about it all night, the 3 criteria that we're going to go through, and I am going to go through these in a little bit of detail on this one. I think this one requires some thought and some discussion. So the first one is it consistent with the future land use map and focus area? So future land use is transitional, which John had discussed. That is designated for lands that are suitable for growth, but defers it to the focus area for what should or can go there. So the focus area for this one is the 41 North, and I've highlighted a couple of things in the bottom there. So the 41 North focus area should provide provisions for multifamily, commercial, and tech uses near higher classifications. So this annexation does. We're proposing some R3, we're proposing some commercial. We're immediately adjacent to the already approved tech park, so it seems to fit that. The other thing I've highlighted there is it facilitates the creation of a backage road. I'm gonna back up and show you this map. The reason we have chosen to define the commercial from the R3 where we have is we've been working with the Joseph Family Trust and their representatives to the west and what they're planning on developing. There will be a backage road that goes from Greens Ferry all the way over to the future extension of Cecil Road, which is right here. That backage road will be right there. That's the location of it that those guys are working on. It seemed appropriate that we joined that. That's a good dividing line for to split the zonings would be that backage road. So that explains why we've done that. And then another thing I've highlighted is at the very bottom there, focus provisions for commercial uses along Arterial and Collector Street. So we have put our commercial along Prairie Avenue. Number 2, John went through the goals and policies. I wanted to add a few of them that he did not touch on in his staff report, particularly goal number 2, to maintain and improve the provision of high quality, affordable, and efficient services in Post Falls. And the reason I think this one is important is, again, the same developer owns that property to the north. This will allow us to provide a larger project with connectivity. We will be putting that backage road in, but having that property to the north, we can connect over to Cecil. We have been working with the developers to the west to provide that backage road connection over to Greens Ferry as well. Lynn Street, as was discussed earlier, will be coming up into the property. So we will be providing efficient services in that form. Policy number 20 is to consider the location of multifamily development in areas that have access to Arterial and Collector Streets, which we do. We have access to Prairie. Ultimately, we'll have access to Cecil Road to the east and Greens Ferry to the west through those backage roads. Help buffer higher and lower intensity development patterns. This one's important because the property to the west, on the north piece of it, in that commercial, as John had indicated, they've proposed storage units in that. So we're buffering up against that storage unit with our proposed R3, and the property that Copper Basin owns to the north, which is already part of that tech park, is already approved for multifamily. So we've got multifamily to the north and the east, we've got storage units to the west, and commercial to the south. So to us, it seems like a good fit to have R3 there. Policy 20, again, abut compatible and existing uses, I just talked about that, and are parts of projects involving mixed use or master plans. So again, we're up against that tech park. You've got commercial to the south. You got commercial across Prairie that's already developed. And policy 27, work to improve street connectivity in all areas of Post Falls, walkability, public health and safety. And again, I talked about that transportation and that connectivity that's going to happen there. And John talked a little bit about the walkability with the Prairie Trail going along Prairie. And then the third one is, does the proposed zoning district create a demonstrable adverse impact upon the delivery of services? And I've highlighted the major services here, and there's no known adverse impacts. All of these people have commented. Their comments are in the staff report. as well. So here's the zoning map. I'll leave that up there. One thing I want to point out as well is you do have a copy of a signed annexation agreement that we have submitted that's in your packet. It did address Councilor Malloy's concerns with the turning movements. That out of Prairie, that was addressed in the annexation agreement. So, questions?
Questions for Mr. Dittman?
I don't know if the questions are for Mr. Dittman or for Mr. Manley. First of all, the tech park and the approval of multifamily and that, it's a limited number of multifamily across the entire swath, correct?
Yeah, they could do up to, it was for up to 10%. I do know that all their multifamily designated housing is west of Cecil Road, and the net sum was 44 acres of, so it was less than 10% of their total annexation area.
So it's a different owner in the rest of the tech park zone, correct?
Then Copper Basin, correct?
Right, so if Copper Basin builds all R3 in that green area, then does that mean that the developer that owns the rest of it can't build any?
It's all spelled out in the annexation agreement. We're all known entities, known quantities at the time of purchase, so they should have been aware of that at time of purchase. If they did want that, they would have to come back for a standalone multifamily. They would have to come in and ask for an amendment to that annexation agreement.
And does the green area there represent 10% or more of the tech park zone?
I think Drew can probably assess the actual size of that green area. I don't know it at the top of my head.
Okay.
So to clarify, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, per the annexation agreement, development agreements from the tech park, all of the multifamily is west of Cecil Road. So Cecil Road would be right here. This green area is 44 acres, which would be that 10%.
I guess I don't remember seeing a development agreement saying it all had to be west of Cecil, just that it had to be 10% of the entire swath or less.
I apologize for not having that development agreement here, but I do know for recollection that the original, it came in two different phases. The original annexation was east of Cecil Road, and then the first one, there was none allowed. The second one that came along was west of Cecil, and then that's where the request was to provide the 10%, less than 10% to the overall net sum.
So I remember when we debated that annexation and zoning, I think the original request was 25% of the entire zone, and I backed it down to 10, and the council agreed to that. I didn't know there was any stipulation as to which side of Cecil it was.
Of course.
So what I don't want to get into is somebody else. Oh,
I believe
I'm gonna
Field, who has the computer, is digging in to seeing if he could
Trying to find
locate
it.
that specific question for you.
Joe, are you more concerned with location or just the total number of acres?
both, I guess, and disputes that may arise because we've got a different property owner that then's going to be left with nothing. But as long as they were aware of that, then I guess that's not going to be an issue. But and I guess while Field's
Yeah,
looking,
you're going to have to give me
Yeah.
a moment.
while Field's looking, the backage road you're talking about.
Yes.
So probably getting too far into my own personal thoughts on this, but a concern I have is the amount of traffic that would dump out onto Prairie. So the backage road is a potential solution for part of that. I wish Cecil Road existed already and the proponent owned the next
Anything with that, so
5-acre chunk.
I don't see.
But is it going to be part of the development agreement, should we approve this annexation today, that one, that backage road has to be there, and two, that the R3 only has access through that backage road?
I'll defer to Mr. Paulus, but I think that's in your transportation master plan, the location of that backage road. Am I correct to say that, Rob?
Well, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer, Councilor Merloy. The City of Post Falls, along with the KMPO, has identified specific north-south backage roads, those being at a quarter-mile Charleville and half-mile Cecil Road running parallel to Highway 41. We do not have officially established backage roads to Prairie Avenue. From what they're proposing, they are proposing something that would function as a parallel or a backage road to Prairie Avenue. It would help distribute traffic and give people, instead of the future three-quarter turn restriction at Lynn Street, it would allow for them to get out to Greens Ferry Road. That would most likely be a stop-controlled intersection. They get over to Cecil Road, that would be a stop-controlled intersection at Cecil, and then Cecil could be either our master plan shows it as a future roundabout or traffic signal. We've been working on some traffic studies that show that Prairie and Cecil may not need to be signalized or a roundabout in the future, but that's a little bit in play right now. Does that help?
That does help.
Okay.
Field did find that annexation.
So the magic of technology, I was able to find the recorded agreement. It does, for the provision for the multifamily restriction, development on the Worth property is allowed for up to 44 acres, subject to the limitations, so on and so forth, within the technology mix zone, up to 15% of the development site. And then it's got the Exhibit A, the attached map, which when you go down to that, it is the Worth area, which is all west of Cecil.
Thank you for refreshing my memory on that. Appreciate it. Probably still need you. So the second part of my question.
How many you still filled?
So the second part about that backage road question, which thank you, Rob, for clarifying that there's no city plan backage road east-west, which I was aware of, but that's a good clarification to put out there. My concern is that we've got 14 acres at play tonight for R3, which is potentially 242 units, which is about 2,400 trips, that at this point would be going in and out on Prairie, and without that backage road. With that backage road, I was wondering if we could insist on a development agreement that says that there is no access to multifamily from Prairie, that there's a walled off, the commercial section has the three-quarter turn onto Prairie, and any residential has to be off of Greens Ferry or Cecil, and not Prairie.
Robert Paul's Assistant City Engineer, if I understand where you're going with this. Prairie Avenue, we're not going to allow for drive access points onto it. Now, were you looking at having a similar type of restriction from the multifamily onto any backage road, or?
So we're looking at now with no road east or west, there's no Cecil Road. The only access to the entire development is going to be from Prairie. So if you have commercial strip right on Prairie and 242 apartment buildings to the north of it, the only way they can get to those apartments is from Prairie. And the only way to get out of those apartments is to Prairie. So if there's a development agreement that says those apartments can only exit via Greens Ferry and Cecil, not onto Prairie, then I might feel a little better about it.
I'm not sure what guidance you're looking at from me on that.
I was asking John.
Well, part of it from an engineering standpoint, though, is looking at, depending on what the different commercial uses have different traffic generations. 242 units of multifamily are going to develop about 242 trips during the peak hour, or whether that's AM or PM. And
isn't it 10 trips a day roughly per unit?
Per unit, but you figure you're going to have close to the same number of peak hour trips that would be equal to the number of units, maybe a little bit higher. So 242, you could say somewhere around 300 to maybe 400 trips coming out during the AM peak and coming in during the PM peak. That is not as high of a concern as if you had the 10 trips per day per unit and you got 2,000 coming out. That would be a different story.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into the semantics of it, but if there's one person per apartment that has a job, then that's 242 trips out in the morning and 242 trips back. If there's more than one person per apartment that has a job, then there's twice that or 3 times that.
Right. And
plus, there's going to be commercial, which often generates more trips than residential does. So add all those together, and you got a bunch of trips going right in and out on Prairie.
And you look at how the trips are distributed over time. Certain commercial uses are going to have high trip generations during the PM where people are coming in. Some of them are bypass trips, some of them are not. In the AM, commercial uses generally do not have very high traffic generation. Businesses don't open as soon as people are heading off to work. And with a left turn lane, if you were to go on Prairie Avenue, just for an example, and take a look at the section from Atlas Road to Ramsey, they have a road, Corsellis, about in the middle in there, which serves, there's a little bit of multifamily, but a couple really large residential subdivisions, and that's pretty much their only access point between Ramsey and Atlas. And it handles a lot of traffic. Granted, there's a little bit higher collision rates at that area, but what I'm anticipating, and this is my professional opinion, is that as this area develops, when we get to that area where we start getting that concern, we'll have had the road built out to its full 5-lane facility, and we'll have the 3/4 turn restriction in, and the access points will then be open to, or not, the access points will be open to get people to Cecil, to get people to Greens Ferry Road. But if you want to put in a restriction that's interim that says you can't develop the multifamily till you hit that, that's more of your request or your recommendation.
Thank you. And I guess my last question on this topic, then I'll shut up. So, Mr. Dittman, would your client entertain a restriction such as that no multifamily housing can be accessed from Prairie Avenue?
At this point, I'd say no, because we don't control the property to the west or the property to the east. So I have no way to, if I controlled that, I said, yeah, I could go build that package road. I would certainly be for that, but we don't control that property, so I can't go build the road. The city doesn't even have the rights of way or easements for it yet. So to us, that would be an unfair restriction. And as Rob had explained, traffic doesn't necessarily work that way. And you want, from an engineering standpoint, I think you'd want as many outlets for traffic as possible. So to limit access to an arterial like that, to me, from a traffic standpoint, doesn't necessarily make sense. You want more outlets. Traffic's like water. It's going to find the path of least resistance.
I think that's a reasonable answer, so thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Wishing to testify? Wishing to testify in opposition, Samantha Stiglater.
Mayor, Council, Samantha Stiglater, Post Falls. Okay, so I think with all of that discussion was really helpful. Thanks for all of that really great information. So I just want to start by saying I think maybe the answer is that everything else get developed around that area before we annex in and decide what this piece of property is going to be and give permission, because that seems to be a lot of the question of what's going to happen in that area, and it doesn't seem reasonable to allow all of this annexation in all of this undeveloped land. Like, let's let it develop a little bit more, a little incrementally, then we can see what really works and what's really needed. Some of the other, that's what, from listening, I thought would be good. The city site actually right now says that there's 699 multifamily units that have already been approved, but don't have a certification of occupancy, so we'd be approving, I think you quoted 244. I did the math, could be like up to 350, maybe more. But we already have, I know the vacancy is 0, but we already have a bunch on the books that aren't available yet anyway, so maybe we don't need to approve a bunch more right now. I don't know, I guess my main thing is that area is all undeveloped, so why annex more in right now and say what it has to be or what it's going to be? There's also not a development agreement, so it's nice to say what it might be, but that's not, my understanding is that that's not written in stone. So we would give them an annexation, we give them a zoning, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what has to be built. As far as the goals and policies, goal number 5, I just don't agree with it. It's safe, vital, and attractive. I think we should not cite that one as one that it meets. Goal 12 is financial stability and long-term health of the city. I don't think that it was identified how this would help support that. And then as far as demonstrable adverse effects from public entities, again, it's not developed, so we actually don't know, like, really, right, if Ross Point Water can serve all of these areas, because they say that they can serve all of this, but we don't know what all of that is going to be. So then to add more in, maybe they can't serve it when it actually comes time for all of it to be built. But I think mainly I don't think it's a good idea for it to be annexed in right now, because the rest of it needs to be developed. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dimon, you care to rebut?
Mayor Jacobson, council members, Drew Dittman. I just wanted to point out, she stated there's 699 approved multifamily units on the books. We are currently seeing, and this is across Kootenai County, North Idaho, there's about a 2% vacancy rate right now in apartments. And that's not even really vacancy, that's turnover, that's somebody moves out, wait a month, somebody moves in. So there is definitely a need for housing. The concept of wait for the property to develop around it, then nothing develops. If you're going to sit here and wait for this guy to go first, then nothing's going to happen. So I'm not saying we're going to be the first, and I'm not saying we're going to build apartments next year. I mean, you guys know this process takes time, and if we get annexed tonight, I mean, we've got planning to go through, we've got site plan to go through, we've got lots of stuff to go through. So we'd be years before we could even break ground on an apartment project out there. So.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Dimon?
Thank you.
Close the public hearing. First question is on the annexation.
Is it in the best interest of the city?
This is one of those tough ones that, yeah, but.
I think annexation of this particular parcel in the best interest of the city, not connected to what is proposed for zoning criteria, makes sense. It is a county island. We've talked about it in the last public hearing. So separate from anything else, annexing the property does make sense to me. It would add value to the city, but connected to what we've discussed.
That's probably a good enough answer, right? Yes.
You don't want to get in the other part yet.
Yeah.
Gary?
This is the one that we denied 3 years ago, or did I get him?
Yeah, that's what he said.
Yes, okay. Because of basically Highway 41 and where it was in the process. And so coming back, that isn't, part of the equation anymore. I would definitely be in favor.
Lynn?
Yeah, I'm good with it. It does give us some access road, Lynn Street, going on that side. So there is some access there, so it is a good infill project. I think it meets that criteria.
Okay, Kenny?
Separating everything away from just the annexation, I'm kind of neutral on it. It is kind of an infill area, but there is a lot of county around there too. And so I don't necessarily see the need to annex it in, but I don't necessarily have anything against it. So kind of neutral on that.
Go through the zoning classifications, and does that give you what you need on the annexation?
Was that sufficient enough to,
Looks like
do you want to move forward?
Looks like you got 4 yeses and a maybe on the annexation
Okay.
part.
Okay, I'll take that. All right. Into the first review criteria, is the proposed zoning district consistent with the future land use map and focus area contained in the currently adopted Post Falls Comprehensive Plan?
I would say yes. It's designated as transitional, which could be commercial or residential. The focus area encourages commercial and high-density residential along the higher classified roadways, which in this case would be Prairie. So, in my opinion, yes, it does meet review criteria 1.
Nathan?
I agree.
Okay.
Yep.
Is the proposed zoning district consistent with the goals and policies contained in the currently adopted Post Falls Comprehensive Plan?
Yes. For the same reasons. Diversity of housing types, diversity of commercial types, employment opportunities, et cetera.
Nathan, want to add something? You got a lot of writing.
Yeah, I'm trying to collect all my notes here for a moment. I know the existing transitional zone is, designates it basically ready for development. What kind of development is then the question of what do we want there? one of the things that I think in the neighboring property, the Greens Ferry Cecil corner, that pushed it over for me to approve that was the limitation on the high-density housing, mostly because of the neighboring 5-acre parcels over on Gallup Lane that were very concerned about the aesthetics of that area. Having said that, even with those restrictions, another part of what made that more attractive to me, it was in the commercial node of Prairie Avenue that we recognized. This parcel is outside of that commercial node. So without the restriction on R3 and being outside of the commercial node, it doesn't quite make sense to me that it is in line with our comprehensive plan for that area.
Anyone else?
I would just say I think it's kind of weak on the support with the goals and policies. A few that were looked at as far as was mentioned, safe, vital, and attractive. Most Post Falls that I've heard from doesn't think that's very attractive. Doesn't think it's very vital. And I would agree or make the claim, the thought that long-term high-density residential is not best for the residents of the community. It doesn't build the same morale that it would if we had home ownership. So I think long-term that's not the best idea, then not the best solution for the city.
So where do we stand on it? Because if we fail one, do we fail the whole?
Not necessarily. It's just a matter of finding
Okay.
goals and policies that either support or don't support the application.
So we have,
so
on that particular one,
I get enough out of it, and
Okay, you
then
got
once
enough
we
for
get the
1%.
vote, then I can parse through everybody's testimony. So,
okay,
anything further?
see none.
All right. On the third review criteria, does the proposed zoning district create a demonstrable adverse impact upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing public services within the city?
Nope.
It didn't appear to.
Well, I think the adverse impact, I guess this is limited to political subdivisions only. Well, I guess it could include the city and the roads and the traffic. Yeah, I kind of hate to do this again, but there were several concerns when this came up 3 years ago. Highway 41 being one of them, because that's where a lot of access north and south is going to go. Prairie Avenue being another. At the time, there was nothing on the corner that was annexed, so it was kind of hanging out by itself in terms of the road improvements. That's been somewhat solved, but part of the, stop me if I get ahead of my skis if I can't use my reasoning for a different annexation to flow into this one. But as it came up earlier, part of the reasoning for limiting to 0 R3 on the corner of Greens Ferry and Prairie was to have so much traffic dumping out onto those two major roads, because that's the only access point. That remains the problem with this one. And I empathize with Mr. Dittman and his client in that they don't control what happens on the properties on either side of them. And I get that, although that's also part of what needs to be weighed when a property is purchased. Again, Field, tell me if I get ahead of my skis, but the potential R3 to the north of this was mentioned several times in the public hearing by both the applicant and the city, so I can talk about that, right?
Sure.
So there's another twice as big of a parcel that is zoned for R3 that may not have any access to anything except Prairie. And the parcels on either side of that have no control over what they build. So we could end up with 35 acres of apartments, no Charlottesville Road, no east-west backage road that was discussed by the proponent, which means all of that stuff goes down on Prairie. And I think that is a demonstrable adverse effect on the city's ability to provide a safe transportation corridor, as was noted by Mr. Paulus, that the example on Prairie with the large developments, what is that, Hawk's Nest and some others, that there has been an increase in traffic accidents on that interchange onto Prairie. If somebody wants to meander through the development and get out on Atlas, they can, but it's not very convenient. Not many people do that. So I have a concern with potential for a whole lot of trips with nowhere to go but onto and off of Prairie. So I'm kind of unfortunately still where I was 3 years ago, that it's a good idea, but not now. And Mr. Dittman, the proponent, understandably, I'd give the same answer, does not want to put a development agreement in there that says that we won't develop unless there's access to anything other than Prairie. I agree with him. But that leaves me with the yes or no to annex, and that leaves me with a no.
Let me ask you a question. So if the concern is the access to Prairie or trying to limit the access, there is no development agreement in place. The question I would have is, if the annexation itself is denied, how long does the applicant have to wait before they can bring it back? The reason I'm asking that question is, if it's denied and the applicant goes back and works with the neighboring property owner, they reach an agreement, they come back with a development agreement that would then create that backage road, provide access to Greens Ferry and Cecil Road, which would address at least some of your concerns, I think, as far as traffic. How long time do they have to wait in order to bring that back?
I don't know what the time frame is. I believe it's in the code. I believe it's a year, but I don't know that there might not be on annexation as far as a time frame to bring it back. I think you can request to annex any time. So.
And the next question I would have is, if annexation were approved with a different zoning designation, that would provide the applicant, they may not like it, but that would provide them an opportunity to come back if in fact then a development agreement is put together that would create that road. I'm just thinking of different options. I'm not saying approve it or not approve it. I'm just throwing out different options.
I do appreciate that option also, but then we still have the concern of the 44 acres to the north that's already approved for R3. So that doesn't, if we limited this one to an R2 or an R1, say, well, they could still build 44 acres R3 with only
Gotcha.
access to Prairie. So,
Gotcha.
But thank you.
I have one quick comment just on the argument that's used not in just this hearing, but in other times too, of vacancy rates. I know that, you know, we have a very high demand for housing, and so our vacancy rates are very low. But I think it's flawed logic in the fact that so what then is the answer? To continue to build as many high-density apartment buildings until the vacancy rate hits what number, 7-8%? Because at that point, once it hits that number, we'll probably have more projects on the books that have yet to be developed. So while I understand
then they
and
probably
not,
won't get built.
Yeah.
you know, I don't want to disregard that we have a high demand, but we may never reach a point where the vacancy rate is 5 or 6% if the demand exceeds even our capacity on the entire Rathdrum Prairie to build it all out. So just a statement about that argument.
Yeah, for me, if I may comment on that, I understand what you're saying, but if we've got, you know, 1,000 units potentially that could be developed, and a developer's got 15 acres they're thinking about putting R3 on, and they look up and they see that vacancy rates are 10%, they're not going to build it. So that pleases itself more or less. But
Business decision.
No, what I mean from a city plan and kind of maybe just an aesthetic of the Rathdrum Prairie, to continue to use the argument that vacancy rates are 2% or less, you can do that in perpetuity if the demand exceeds the capacity.
understood.
Which I don't think we want to do.
Right.
Good discussion. I'd entertain a motion.
If there is no motion, does it just die?
It would be good to have some sort of motion whether or not to approve or deny.
I move to deny Copper Basin Prairie Avenue annexation file number ANNX 23-3.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Ziegler,
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Swayed me.
Next item up tonight is unfinished business, returning ordinances, and we have Water Reclamation Facility Tertiary Treatment Project, change order. I should point out it's change order number 66.
It is.
You guys are very patient, believe me.
Oh, no. Connection thing.
Uh-oh, the dreaded waiting for connection. I'll try and get through this quickly. I won't because you can't see what I can see. There we
Oh,
go.
we can.
All right.
Talk fast.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, John Beecham, Public Works Director. I am here to present a change order for our water reclamation tertiary treatment project. This is probably the longest negotiated change order I've ever been a part of. We've been telling you for about a year that the next time we come before you, we'll be presenting something on schedule and cost escalation. Well, we're finally there. So. I will, just for the purposes of anybody tuning in, go through what the project is, and then talk about the change order itself, and then talk about next steps. As you recall, 10 years ago, we had a permit issued that required us to upgrade our wastewater treatment plant to meet new discharge requirements, specifically for phosphorus treatment. This project will satisfy that. It also anticipates and meets capacity needs, and we're investing in our treatment plant so that we're not doing duplicate upgrades in the future. In terms of where we are on that 10-year compliance schedule, we are here November 2023 when construction was to be completed on compliance upgrades. Spoiler alert, we are not complete on this project, which is why I'm here to talk to you tonight. In terms of the project itself, we bid the project in March of 2020 and awarded the project in May of 2020. You may recall that was a pretty interesting time in the world, and we had a no-go decision on this project. Should we award it, given that there's a pandemic kicking off? We've never been through one of those before. Is this a good idea? And we did award the project, and the reason we did that is we had that compliance agreement with Idaho DEQ, with EPA, and we were trying to meet our commitment to upgrade the plant, meet discharge requirements, despite whatever was coming. So project impact events throughout the last 3 years are the pandemic, the Ukraine war, which affected a lot of metals supply things, just the supply chain in general. And then there have been construction challenges as well, and I'll talk about a little bit about that as we go through here. If we look at what is currently in the contract, the required completion date is October 27th of 2022. Right around the 28th, we sent a notice to the contractor that said, we noticed the project's not complete. We'd like to negotiate a reasonable schedule extension with you, but we are reserving our rights for all the penalties that go with that in the contract. Those negotiations definitely took a while, but I guess I would say we tried to encapsulate all of the things we've learned over the last 3 years in one change order, so we're not coming before you 66 times. This is sort of the big one. Prior to this change order, we've added 23 days to the contract. And the reason that number is relatively low is because we've said, yes, there's a 5-day impact on this, but it's really going to be absorbed by this schedule adjustment we're doing. So there's no, on change order 27, for example, there is no time impact because it's really just subsumed by this larger change order. I think I covered all the rest of that. So in terms of this specific change order, it adds 488 days to the contract. That would bring us to December 29th of this year. It moves the, that brings us to December 29th for the vast majority of the project. And it moves to February 27th of next year, the completed startup of our membrane facility. So there is in the contract a 30-day, after everything's installed and works, there's a 30-day period where that membrane facility has to run, and then any issues that are found in that 30 days have to be worked out. So that's why there's an additional time added onto this for that specific startup. And then the change order also just specifically states there will be 30 days following substantial completion to finish all the little things that are on the punch list. So going into the dollars of this, we negotiated an overhead payment to the contractor, so paying some of the contractor's overhead. That was based on a schedule extension of 308 days, which has changed to 488, but the price was negotiated on that 308. The contractor estimates that and they've shared these numbers with me, that it's about $9,500 a day for them to run the job in addition to the cost of labor and materials. So if you do that out over 488 days, it's a lot larger than the number that's in the change order. The change order itself is about 37% of that overhead and of what the contractor is claiming for overhead. And basically that represents a good faith negotiation on the city's behalf that it was a lot harder to build this project than we all thought when we awarded the bid. When you factor in a pandemic, a war that affected the supply chain, and other things outside the contractor's control, we agree that some of the schedule extension, we should compensate them for their overhead time. We've done this on other projects. It has been at a lesser overhead rate and a lesser dollar figure, but the practice has been largely how we handled extended contract schedule problems through the pandemic. Question?
If I may ask an ignorant question, aside from labor and overhead, what is there? I mean, I know there's more, but.
Sorry, so direct labor and overhead, direct labor and materials costs would be like buying a pump, bolting it, and paying somebody to bolt it in. But the project manager in Great Falls who ordered that pump and worked through all the specifications doesn't directly get charged to the job on that. So that's what the overhead would be, is that project manager actually in an office somewhere looking at it.
And the project manager doesn't get paid $9,500 a day, though, I assume.
No, there's a number of staff working on it. Number of staff working on it. There's lodging for some of the management staff that are here in town that have bought or leased houses for the duration of the project. There's vehicles that are not directly associated with installing the work. So it's that sort of thing that's included in that overhead number.
Okay, I'm not saying you hadn't reviewed it. It was an ignorant question, like, man, there's a lot going on there.
There is a lot going on, and I think that number really speaks to the complexity of building a $47, $48 million job.
Thank you.
So the overhead that is a part of this change order represents about 4.5% increase on the value of the contract. So that $1.7 million overhead number increases the contract value by 4.5%. Questions on overhead? I'm going to kind of go through each element of the change order.
See that?
Also included in this change order is a negotiated escalation payment to the contractor. This is for materials that at the time of bid were one number, and when they went to buy it, they said, that's nice that you have a purchase order or a contract, but the new price is this. Would you still like your item? And by and large, we wanted the items that were in the contract. Most of the escalation was managed by the contractor, and when I say that, take something like stainless steel bolts. There's no escalation item for stainless steel bolts, even though the cost on those went up. They either had a contract for it and held somebody to that contract, or they just paid the increased cost for that minor item. What we do have in here are a specific number of items, and those are included in the packet. We've gone through and made sure the supporting documentation's there. But the adjustment in this change order is for $670,000 of escalation. We have previously brought you some large ticket escalation items that needed to be resolved in order to actually get the equipment on site. When you add all that together, it is $1.05 million, including the 0.67 that we're talking about tonight. So total escalation on this project, 1.05. So what do we get in exchange for allowing them 488 more days and compensating them about $2.3 million? Assurances is what we get in that. This really sort of puts a bow on the uncertainty of having built a project during the pandemic and with the supply chain issues tied to war in Ukraine. In the contract, there's provisions that say there's some things that are outside the control of the contractor, and the contract doesn't cover that. So this puts a bow on that and says this is how we're going to handle those events as they affected our project. It establishes new deadlines and clear expectations for what happens if those aren't met. It also allows us to kind of draw a new line in the sand for the project and say everything that happened prior to November 21st happened before November 21st. We're all moving forward to completion now, And those past issues have been addressed in some sort of compensation or schedule adjustment. So it allows us to go into startup with sort of a fresh start on the project, that all of the baggage of the last 3 years has been resolved with this change order. There are a few very specific things called out in there that are not resolved with this, just for full transparency. This is the final escalation adjustment for issues that are known or should be known. So that means there's no sending us a note tomorrow that says, oh, by the way, back in June of 2021, we had this price increase for this item that is on your job. So anything that the contractor should know about as of today, this would be the final escalation adjustment for. And it also resolves the question of overhead. This project has taken a lot longer to complete than we thought. Is there any fair compensation due to the contractor for those delays? Yes, this answers what that dollar value is. What all of this really does is, if there are disputes in the future, it takes the temperature down in the room by a couple orders of magnitude. So an issue comes up in startup, and we're arguing over a $25,000 issue and not over a combined $2.5 million issue. So if that makes sense. So in summary, is a large dollar figure, but staff do recommend the change order be approved. It adds the 488 days. It adds $2.3 million in compensation. I did want to note that is overall, with this change order, that is a 6.3% adjustment to the overall contract. And like I said, it resets expectations as we go into startup.
Does that 6.3% include the contingency or no?
I don't remember what I used for the denominator.
So it only makes a couple of points difference. But.
Let's talk about where that money would come from. Sorry, I thought my question slide was next. So, the funding sources that we have lined up for this still align with what we have in our master plan. So funding will still come from capital funds, from our replacement fund for water reclamation facility, from a DEQ loan, and I think I have a slide on that in a second. In looking at our draft water reclamation facility master plan that we've talked to you about a few times, it is not anticipated that this is going to significantly delay other projects or prevent us from doing something else. The reason for that is just the timing of projects, other projects coming in on budget, growth revenues exceeding what we had in the original master plan, or in the 2013 master plan. So is this a significant financial setback? Yes. Will it have detrimental effects on what we're able to do going into the future? I don't think so. I think that's it works itself out with some of the things that have gone our way over the past 10 years. This is that financial summary I talked about with the percentages of where the new, the increased cost would be coming from. And this compares it with July of 23, which is when I believe we had the last contract amendments for this project before you. As usual, we'll talk about next steps. Regardless of what's done tonight, we're going to continue to work to complete this project. We think the change order helps us get to that. The next steps really are startup for the project. A lot of the equipment is on site installed. They're getting wires connected to it. We're starting to talk about how we're going to work through all the equipment and get it started up, get training accomplished, that sort of thing. We're also actively working with Idaho DEQ to adjust our compliance agreement schedule that has that deadline. And with that, I happily answer any questions.
Just make a comment real quick, John. You know, I don't like the increased cost. I don't like the increase in the number of days, but I understand that basically was out of your control. I think you and your staff have done an admirable job overseeing this, negotiating through it. Circumstances arose that no one saw coming. As a result, it had a financial and a time impact on the project. So while I'm not real pleased with it, I think you've done a good job answering the questions that needed to be answered. I think you've put together a plan that would help us hopefully move forward to finalizing this phase of the plan and getting all the improvements brought online. So you know, I commend you for your efforts on that.
Thank you.
Council, Joe.
So the way I interpret it is clarification, I'm interpreting it correctly. So it said it was basically a split. So is the contractor eating roughly about the same amount as we're paying in extra, or?
Yeah, in terms of overhead, if their rate is the $9,500 a day they claimed, they're eating 63% of that cost, and we're paying 37% of it based on what's negotiated. In terms of escalation, we're paying the full requested escalation that they've documented. And when I've talked to the contractor about that, I have the numbers if I need to dive into them, but there are many, many, many things that they resolved without bringing to us.
Right.
These are the things that they could not resolve. I think it's in the packet what the increase is on the materials that were a part of the bid, and I think it's like a 6% increase on materials, if I recall correctly. So everything they had to buy, the whole increase to the city is 6% more. And I know there's things that were more than 6% throughout the course of this job.
That's the part of the packet I understand, because I live in the materials world, but, and so I said I didn't know if you had a rough estimate. I kind of put you on the spot, but I know they're eating a significant expense, especially materials, because a 6% increase in materials is way below the rate of inflation. And I'm in a different industry, but I've been seeing them, in excess of 30 to 40% year over year for the last 3 years. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have that dollar figure in terms of what they've paid
Yeah,
on
the
everything
public
else.
might be interested to know. Of course, that may not be public info either, but.
It hasn't been shared with me.
Right.
It's not that I didn't bring it with me. It's
I'm just
I
imagining
haven't
it's a
shared
fair
that
amount,
specific
so.
number.
Any comments?
I would say just what Councilor Roy alluded to is that as a percentage of the product or the project escalation, it's much lower than I would probably anticipate, considering what happened during that time period. So.
I just congratulate you guys and Sletten both, because the paperwork was tremendous, and to sort through all of that and have the accuracy that you have, you should be congratulated for that. Good job.
Thank you.
You're why they couldn't email the agenda.
Yeah, no kidding.
I contributed to that problem.
Yeah.
Thank goodness for electronic.
I would move to approve the water reclamation facility tertiary treatment project change order number 66 with Sletten Construction.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Next item up tonight is new business. We have 2 items. First is the purchase of a new paint striping truck.
Good evening, council members, Mr. Mayor. Ross Junkin, Public Works Maintenance Manager, here to touch base with you on a request for a replacement for our paint striping truck. We identified this truck as needing to be replaced about 3 years ago. It's costing us money to keep it in service, as well as we are seeing an increase number of roads and lane miles that we're having to stripe, and it's getting harder and harder to keep up, and with the construction window that we have to do the work that we need to do, and this truck is limiting some of that work to be done and accomplished in that amount of time. The existing truck is an 06, and you can see the repair work that we've done in those 4 years. We typically have to go through pumps and the whole system every year and replace quite a bit of parts and quite a bit of labor into each one or each of the components of it. Excuse me. I alluded to the number of lane miles that we continue to see increased in our city each year. And another interesting aspect is we only apply this paint when it's 70 degrees and warming. The reason for that is we don't like getting the calls from citizens, our citizens, and the motoring public of paint on their cars. It takes a significant amount of time for paint to dry, the lower temperatures that you go, and we feel 70 degrees is a pretty good threshold to get our work done in a good drying time. A new truck I should talk about our existing truck. Our existing truck only has the capability to paint one color. So when we come out to paint, start with white. And we also only have the ability to paint one width at a time. without coming back to make adjustments to the shop. So we'll go out, we'll paint white, 4-inch stripes, come back, recalibrate, reset it. It's quite the process. And then when we need to switch to yellow, we have to do the same whole process again. And we're also fighting that weather window, so we're targeting that temperature as well. So a new truck would allow us to have both colors on the truck, and it would also allow us to do those adjustments in the field and just continue painting throughout the day. It also, one of the options in the newer technologies of these trucks is that the spray tips can be cleaned out in the field. They can just be jetted out and blown out. We use water-based paint, so it's not a problem to do that out there. And I mentioned that we can make adjustments out there without having to return to the shop and recalibrate everything. The existing truck we have, we do have plans to keep that truck in our fleet, the street fleet. The chassis only has 17,000 miles on it. However, the equipment on it has a lot of hours on it. So our plan is to strip it down, reuse that truck, and turn it into a stencil truck. Just cannibalizing the existing truck to turn it into a stencil truck, which is hand paint the symbols that are on the ground. That would give us a lot more capability and flexibility out there to do this work. I have identified the funds in the budget, so those were placed in there when they were approved for fiscal year 24. And with this truck, it's on the Sourcewell purchasing co-op, and there's a 7% discount for that, using that cooperating purchasing agreement. At the time when we were budgeting earlier this year, we were expecting to pay $450,000. We were able to find one that was $25,000 less than that, which we were pleased with. So I am here to request authorization to purchase an Easy Liner paint striping truck for $424,428 from Vogel Traffic Services, and keep the existing paint truck S234 in our city fleet. Take any questions?
Any questions for us?
Well, that sounds a lot more efficient, and it looks like you were a good shopper on that. Are they holding that truck for you at 424?
The chassis that they have 3 of them in their system, and they're a little bit cheaper. However, once those are spoken for by other agencies that are trying to buy these trucks, they'll be gone. We've been told if we can't purchase or get a PO to them by the end of the month, that the price will go up $30,000. So then we'll be up and over that $450,000 target that we were looking at. So.
Thanks.
Entertain a motion.
Good, I have it.
I'd move to approve the water reclamation facility.
Wait, we're below that.
Oh, no, I'm not. We already did that. I'm gonna make a motion that it's been a long night, that we approve the purchase of a new paint striping truck.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Ross. Next item up under new business is Post Falls Community Forest Hazard
3 hours
Fuels
against my lunch.
Treatment Grant. Brian.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Myers, Parks Manager. I'm standing in for Preston Hill tonight. He's feeling a little under the weather. So this grant opportunity is provided by the Idaho Department of Lands in cooperation with U.S. Forest Service. It is part of a state forest fire assistant grant program that's under the parent program of the U.S. Forest Service and the Forestry Assistant Program of 1978. The grant is offered through the Kootenai County Office of Emergency Management, so it is actually not us being the grantee. Kootenai County Office of Emergency Management would operate this grant for us. And what we're looking for is just the match portion to reimburse the county for the dollars that would be ordinarily match dollars to pursue the grant. The total value of the grant is $125,000. What we're looking at establishing is a shaded fuel break. So a full fuel break would be a clear cut. What we're looking at is a shaded fuel break along generally the southern boundary of the community forest. We're working with a consulting forester on this to identify the full scope of work. It'll be a combination of mechanized equipment, forestry mulching heads on the front of cats or skid steers, mastication type equipment, and a combination of hand slashing, fuel reduction work. So the idea is you're creating space within the canopy of 10 feet of trees that are larger than 10 feet in height. For trees that are less than 10 feet in height, you're removing 50% of the crown and keeping those smaller trees in bunches so you don't have ladder fuels to move up into the canopy. The idea is that we're trying to reduce the potential for fires either moving from Western View Drive into the community forest or like we saw in this last fire season, a fire that starts within the community forest moving southward into our neighbor property owners. So with that, we've started that work of drafting that full scope of work. That would include a hazardous fuel treatment prescription and a defensible space plan. Those would be all consolidated in and presented with the MOU between Kootenai County Office of Emergency Management and IDL. There is one other grant operation that we're pursuing that's with Idaho Emergency Management Office that Utilities Division is pursuing the lead on that. We've reviewed these two grant opportunities and don't see them as being opposing, and they're looking to accomplish separate tasks. There is still, as you can see on the western portion of the property, there's still other private landowners adjacent to the community forest that wouldn't be benefiting from this treatment. So we'll be looking at that as a potential. We're also looking at the potential of just conducting some of our ordinary silvicultural plan tasks with that other grant opportunity to just reduce the overall fuel loading in the forest in general. So what we're looking for today is a grant or a match commitment letter to provide to the Kootenai County Office of Emergency Management so that they can then sign an MOU. We would then bring that back to you at a future meeting so you're aware of the whole process and what that would look like.
Brian, as I recall, was the dollar amount for the match $12,500?
It is $12,500, so 10% match.
Questions, Brian?
Pretty good. Pretty good.
In light of last year's event, I think that would be the best $12,500 we've spent in a long time. So. I would move to approve the Post Falls Community Forest Hazard Fuels Treatment Grant.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Thorson.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next item on the agenda tonight is citizen issues, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding a city-related issue that is not on the agenda. Seeing none, we get down to administrative and staff reports. I'm assuming we have none tonight?
We have none tonight, sir.
Wonderful. Mayor and council comments. I'd just like to say wish everyone a happy Thanksgiving, and hopefully we can all enjoy what we have, be thankful for it, and would encourage everyone to be cognizant of those who are less fortunate and be willing to reach a hand out and help them enjoy a nice Thanksgiving as well. Council comments? Seeing none? We do need an executive session for two items tonight.
And, excuse me, I would move to enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061C to acquire an interest in real property which is not owned by a public agency. And B, Idaho Code 74-2061F, to communicate with legal counsel for the public agency to discuss the legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigation or controversies not yet being litigated but imminently likely to be litigated, and that no action or decisions will be made in the session, which will last approximately 10 minutes.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Malloy.
Aye.
Ziegler.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Shove.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. We'll enter executive session. Call the meeting back to order. Are there any motions to come forward?
Move to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.